on YouTube. Just want to make sure that that runs smooth and easy. Always takes a couple of seconds. But there we go. I think we are live as well. And let me put the recording on. Oh, recording stopped. There we go. Keep on pressing the right kind of buttons. So there we go. Welcome to the Master Your Exit live show powered by The Big Exit. I'm Lynn, and together with Graham will be your host for today. On this Master Your Exit live show, we bring you practical insights, expert interviews, and tools like today to help small business owners like you prepare for your. This live show every Tuesday at 7 a.m. in Los Angeles, 10 a.m. in New York, or 3 p.m. in London time. And we keep each show short and simple, about 30 minutes maximum. Now, if you're tuning in live on our YouTube channel or on our LinkedIn channel, that's really cool. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're joining us live here in our virtual Zoom studio, awesome. That's also really cool. You can ask questions, anything related to exiting via the chat function here in the Zoom studio, and we'll be happy to answer your questions either during this show or any of the future episodes. And if you're catching this episode later, you can find more episodes of the show on our website, thebigexit.co/master your exit shows with a little dash in between, or listen to the audio version on your favorite podcast platform. Now, in today's show, we will be answering the question, how much is my agency worth? Or how much is your agency worth? We're going to give a live demo of our free and independent business valuation tool, which all of you can access on our website, thebigexit.co/business valuation tool. So how much is my agency worth? That's the question that we are going to answer today. And in order for us to answer that question, we're just going to go straight into our website and our business valuation tool, which we have created together with the amazing team of BizVal. So Graham knows all the ins and outs of the business valuation tool, and will walk you through it as well as through the results that you are getting from this valuation tool. So let me just share my screen and particularly our website so you can straight away see where you can find our valuation tool. Hold on, let me make sure I'm clicking the right kind of buttons. There we go. If all goes well, you should be able to see the homepage of our website. Let me make that just a little bit bigger. There we go. Can you see that as well, Graham?
Yeah, we got it.
Awesome. That's cool. So I'm just going to the homepage, first of all, thebigexit.co. So you can find your way on the website to our free resources. We both have an independent business valuation tool, which we will walk you through in just a second. And we also have an exit readiness quiz or an exit readiness assessment that gives you a score from 0 to 100, indicating how exit ready your business is. We're not covering that today on the show. We are going to go straight into the independent business valuation tool. So what's my business worth today? Now there's a little bit of an introduction on this page as well, but let me scroll down straight away to the part where you can enter in basically 10 pieces of information that, based upon those pieces of information, we will calculate in the background a valuation range for your particular agency. So let me just walk through the questions bit by bit so you can see what they are. And Graham, if you feel like you want to highlight some of the questions that are in the tool and the relevance of why we are asking these questions, feel free to do so. And then we go all the way till the end of the valuation tool and the results that you can get straight away after completing the 10 questions. Does that work for you?
Yeah, I think maybe if I can just jump in quickly, I think just important to remember this is a a light version of a valuation tool. So the idea behind this is not to replace the need for a comprehensive valuation, understanding the different value drivers. But what we've tried to do is to make it really easy so that you can get a realistic starting point. A lot of the free tools that are out there, unfortunately, give massively overinflated numbers and create an unrealistic expectation for sellers in particular. So we've tried to, so what we do is we look at it through the lens of a potential acquirer. This is designed to be fairly straightforward. So we don't make any massive adjustments for, normalizations and everything. But provided information that you're putting in, is accurate, it will give you a really good sense in a matter of minutes. And I think that's important. And then you can go and, if you take one of the big exit programs, it covers a fully comprehensive valuation. But the idea is that if your numbers don't change, there shouldn't be a big difference between what you get in here versus what sort of a more robust valuation is. But again, it's limited info. So it's going to be limited in what you can actually do with it. So I think that's an important disclaimer, Lynn. And I just want to kind of mention that up front.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Awesome. So let me walk through the 10 questions that are part of this business valuation tool. And Graham, please feel free to jump in if you
Sure.
feel like a specific question you want to highlight a little bit more. So, I mean, obviously, first of all, we ask for your name. So I'm just going to type in mine basically as a test case.
Just to jump in there, I mean, a lot of people are worried about confidentiality of information and everything. So when you put your name in there, I mean, ideally put in your real name, but nowhere do we actually ask for your business name. So if you're worried about sensitive information or anything along those lines, you can put in a fake name. You have to put in a real email address. If you think that it's super sensitive and you don't want your business email, use a private email address. So this is just so that we can get hold of you and contact you in case there's any questions or any queries. So I think that is important. Everything that comes through here is completely confidential. It's encrypted, and we've tried to make it so there's no identifying features of your actual business in the questionnaire.
Awesome. Thank you for highlighting that. And that's also immediately the main reason why we are asking for your email address as well. I mean, you can put in a private email address, but just make sure that it is an actual email address that you can access, because the results are going to be sent to that email address. So just make sure that you enter in a valuable an email address that you can actually access, because otherwise you won't be able to get your results. So I'm just going to type in mine. And then there's a couple of questions related to your business. First of all, how old is your business? So there's a couple of options here. I'm going to put in 5 to 10 years, which most of the clients we tend to work with, small business owners, have been running their business for anywhere between 3 to 10 years time. So I'm just going to add in 5 to 10 years for the sake of this
If I can jump in
valuation.
there and explain that, Lynn. I mean, the reason maybe for each of these, I'll just explain why it's important. So the age of your business is about helping to understand how much track record, how much history do you have. Typically, a business that's brand new, like if you've been in business for one day, okay, you usually a lot riskier than a business that's been in existence for a long time. So this is just one of those indicators as to how risky your business is. The riskier the business, generally the lower the value. So value is a function of risk and reward. Okay, so this is one of those markers. You'll see there's a few others that we ask for, but age of your business is just one of those things we use to ground kind of where on that spectrum of brand new, no track record, through to, hey, we've got a bit of a history about the business to kind of ground some of that reality in.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Graham. Next question is, what sector do you operate in? Now, I told you before, we're trying to figure out how much your agency is worth. So professional services is an option here as a sector. Obviously, there are many more available, so make sure that you're picking the right one for your kind of business. But for the sake of figuring out your agency's worth, we're going to type in professional services. Anything you want to add
There are a
to
few
that?
options there. Sorry, I'm speaking over you again, but I think the sector you operate in, again, this matters. So, if you're in a restaurant sector versus an IT sector, there's going to be differences. Again, it comes back down to risk and also kind of where the market's at for those sectors. So, an advertising business could be professional services. I think there's another option here for media service entities. So, yeah, pick the one that is closest to your business. Maybe you're not an agency, maybe you said maybe you're a restaurant, but pick the one that's closest. And if you don't find one that's completely aligned to the sector you think you're in, there's another option, I think, at the bottom, Lynn. But for
Yeah,
sake of demonstration, let's go with professional services.
awesome. Thank you. Fifth question is, what's your primary region of operations? Now, we work with a lot of clients who are based in the US, so I'm going to add North America, but this is a global business valuation tool with data from all over the world based on continent as well. So for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to put in North America, but there's any region in the world that is captured within this business valuation tool. Not sure if you want to add something to that, Graham.
Yeah, I think, again, why is this important? Where your business is matters. Okay, so if you're in North America, let's say for argument's sake, it's a huge market, lots of spending power. So the opportunity and also the fundamentals matter. So what I mean by that, what is the growth rate of the country or the region? What is the interest rate? So if you're in an area with very high interest rates, let's say Turkey as an example, or Turkey, I think it's officially Turkey now, is high inflation, high interest. All things else being equal, will likely have a lower value than a business which is in North America with lower inflation and lower interest rates. So that's what the region drives. Where your business is located does and can matter from a valuation perspective.
Thank you. Number 6 is the currency you operate in. So in our case, North America, US dollars most likely. So I'm just entering US dollars. And then we're going to add in the annual profit after tax. We mostly work with small businesses. So I'm putting in a number which is not in the millions or tens of millions of dollars, but a healthy profit after tax, 162,000. The more accurate your number is that you put in here, obviously, the more accurate your results are going to be from this business valuation tool. So there's no need to inflate it. If you're not sure what it is, have a look at your most recent annual report where you can find that information. But be as accurate as possible, because this is a number that will, besides all the other things that you have entered into this business valuation tool, is going to have a major influence on how much your agency is worth. Anything you want to add to that, Graham, specifically?
I think a few things I want to talk on. A lot of the time, people think that their business is valued based on revenue. Okay. Revenue is just what's going in at the top. Okay. You could have lots of revenue and very high costs, and you're not making any money. At the end of the day, does your business make money? That's the first thing. The other thing we're doing here is we're not making, as I said a little bit earlier, any normalization adjustments. So let's say, and a common one around this is, are you as the owner paying yourself a fair market salary? Okay. So if you're an agency that employs 5 people, 10 people, okay, sometimes what happens is the owner doesn't pay themselves a salary. They take a dividend, or they take after profit and they pay themselves a dividend. Now, when you go through a more comprehensive valuation, we'll adjust for that. What our recommendation is here, the assumption is that you're paying yourself a fair market salary. If you are not, if you're paying yourself $40,000 a year or 40,000 euros a year, and you should be paying yourself 80, what you can do to get a more accurate answer is actually reduce. If you're not paying yourself enough, reduce yourself by how the shortfall in what your salary is. Okay, because an investor is going to say, well, if I buy the business from you and you out the business, then I'm going to need to pay somebody to do the job that you were doing. So this number, the bigger businesses generally would pay their staff and their teams and that a fair salary. Equally, sometimes the owner pays themselves too much, so they're paying themselves $150,000 a year, where fair market salary might be $50,000 a year, and then your profit would be understated. So I think, for simplicity purposes, look what's on your accounts, but also bear that in mind. Are there any sort of adjustments that might need to be made? We don't want you to second guess here. So, this is a good starting point. But bear in mind, if you're not paying yourself a salary, it's probably going to give you a value. Your business value is going to be higher than what it would be if you made that adjustment. So, yeah, a few points to note here, but profit is what matters.
Amazing. Thank you for clarifying this, because I think this is the most crucial part in our independent business valuation tool, is making sure this number is as accurate as possible and making sure that it reflects a fair payment of you as the founder or the business owner in your business. So fair salary. And if that is not the case, make sure that you adjust your profit downwards if you're underpaying yourself, or upwards if you're downwards, if upwards if you're underpaying yourself. Anyway, just what Graham was explaining. Sorry, I just got back from holiday and my brain is still a little bit switched off. But just make sure that this number represents a fair pay for you as the founder or the owner. And if not, make sure it gets adjusted accordingly.
Yeah. One thing I do want to just add in here as well is, if you're making a loss, okay, so if you're not making a profit, this model does not cater for those eventualities. So if you put in a negative number here, it's not going to magically go and be able to understand what the prior year's performance was and all of those good things. So unfortunately, if that would require a more in-depth view and a more in-depth valuation. So that's just a disclaimer here as well.
Amazing. Thank you. That's valuable, specifically for those, maybe not those who run agencies, but I can imagine those who run businesses that are very capital intensive, or maybe run SaaS businesses that are nowhere near profitability just yet. As you were saying, Graham, rightfully, is this business valuation tool is not the best tool to do that, because either your profit's going to be zero, but you can't enter in any negative numbers in this instance. So thanks for clarifying that, Graham.
Cool.
Number 8 is the expected annual growth rate for the next 3 years. Now, let's just say the market is just slowly but steadily growing for your agency, and your agency is slowly but steadily growing. So I'm going to put in the number 0 to 5%. Obviously, you're not really sure how the growth rate is actually going to look like in the next 3 years. But if you've been around in business for a little while, you probably have some kind of a rough idea where your market and therefore your agency is heading toward. So I'm going to enter in, for the sake of this exercise, 0 to 5%. If you're not expecting any growth, you can add that too. If you're expecting a lot of growth, you can enter that in as well. Why is this an important question, Graham?
I mean, it's funny. I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and they said, "No, we don't believe in growth. Why you consider growth in evaluation? It only what happened in the past matters." Okay, growth. So valuation is actually a forward-looking view. An investor looks at your business and they say, "I'm going to invest X amount in the business, and over time, I'm expected to get a return on that via profits." And the more that those profits are growing, and the more certain that those profits are, the higher the value. And I just want to use a very simple analogy here. Is, let's say you're 25 years old, okay, and from when you've been 18, you've been smoking, drinking, partying up a storm, and what have you. At the age of 25, you say, "Well, actually, what is my future life expectancy?" Okay, I'm using that as an analogy. Okay, if you have made a pact and you said, "Listen, I've stopped smoking, I've stopped drinking, I'm exercising, I'm eating healthily, what have you," even though your past performance wasn't great, okay, you're going to be doing far better than somebody who continues those bad habits, let's call it that. So your past behavior is a predictor of future behavior, but you have to look at it in context. What I normally recommend here is look at what your growth rate has been for the last 2 to 3 years. If it's been 0 to 5% a year, unless you've got massive changes in the business, a new sales approach, or you've landed a major client or something along those lines, look at that to represent that. If you've been growing at 0 to 5%, don't go and put 50% growth in over here. It's not going to be realistic. So you need to put in here what is actually realistic and what your business can achieve. It's not a perfect science, but yeah, look at your past growth and then factor that in when you think about what your growth rate is.
Perfect. Thank you. Last or one before last question. If you take a 3-week holiday, what happens? Now, for most of the business owners that we work with and get to work with, and founders that we get to work with, for most of them, it's like, I can go away for 3 weeks, but I do need to be available for my team. Now, choose the one that fits right for you. Maybe you can't like manage not even a 3-day holiday. Maybe you're not taking any holidays because you're just basically hustling 24/7. Make sure that you pick the right fit for you. For most of the clients that we work with, it's like, I can take a 3-week holiday, but my team, they need to get access to me whilst I'm on holiday to make sure that, like when something happens, I can kind of take care of it. Now, Graham, anything you want to add to that before we go to the last question?
This is actually one of my favorite questions, because one of the single biggest reasons is when somebody's buying a business is they don't want to buy a job, they want to buy a business, an investment. And what this question does is we always talk about, is the business overly dependent on you as the founder? That's what we're trying to get to. Now, there's a whole bunch of sub questions when you go into more detail around this, like, do you have a CRM system? Have you got proper accounting processes? Can somebody pay the payroll if you're away? But we could go and ask 20 questions like that, and this just becomes a long exercise. Or we can this one question. The idea is that it captures all those things. Okay. So that's really the reason behind the question, and it's super, super important. It can make a material difference to the value if you can't even take a 3-minute toilet break versus a 3-week holiday.
Excellent. Yeah, great example. And then the last question that we ask is mostly for us. Why are you doing a valuation? What we get to see with all the valuations that we have been doing over the last, I think, about a year and a half, is for a lot of people, they do a valuation because they're thinking about selling their business, or they have some curiosity. Maybe an exit is still quite long ahead of them. But for most of them, it's because they want to sell the business in a certain amount of time, or because they're kind of curious to know. This is purely for us. It doesn't make any difference for the valuation, but we would like to know, like, why do you want to do a valuation in the first place? And then you submit all of your answers. And what you get to see is this thing, which is, thank you very much. The details of your independent business valuation have been submitted successfully, and it will be sent to you via email shortly. And shortly literally means within 3 to 4 seconds. So this will already be in my inbox with the business valuation results that we get from the answers that we have been giving in this tool. Now, make sure if you don't get it within a couple of seconds, check your spam folder, check your junk mail, because it might land there. Normally it won't, but if it doesn't, just make sure to check it. And let me just do a stop of my screen share. There we go. And go to my inbox because the results are there as well. Here it is. And I'm just gonna share my screen once more. There we go. And here's the email. Yep, if all goes well, you should see the email, which has this title, the big exit valuations, and it's sent from my personal email address, lynn@thebigexit.co. You literally get this within seconds. Now, this is based on the data that we have entered into the business valuation tool. And here are the results that you get to see. I mean, this is the name that I put in earlier on. So thank you so much for conducting an express valuation of your business. And here is the results. It's indicated in US dollars because we asked for US dollars. And then there's a bunch of information there. So let's just go through that piece of information first before kind of wrapping up today's show. Graham, I leave this with you to walk us through what our clients get to see when they do this express business valuation.
Yeah, so I think the first thing I want to say is this is a range. Okay, now if you get the more information you get, the closer and more accurate you can get. So you'll see it's quite a broad range. So it's from $600,000 to $900,000. Now, if you go into more detail around that, some people may have more cash in the bank, and when you go through a more detailed valuation, you unpack more detail. The indicative value you see there is the sort of midpoint of that range. If you remember in this valuation, we said an after-tax profit of $165,000. I think we captured around that, which means a before-tax profit of about $220,000, okay, or thereabouts. Which then gives you a range, what we call an EBITDA multiple. We call it an EBITDA. It stands for earnings before interest, tax, and depreciation. For most businesses that we're doing here, that would be the same as your profit before tax number. Okay. We use that terminology because it's not strictly speaking always EBITDA, but that's what we're actually showing as your cash profit that you're generating. And that multiple is actually a function of that. Okay. This is reflected as a before tax number because that's kind of the standard. And when you go through the more detailed valuations, we unpack that. It doesn't mean you can sell for this value, so this is if your business is as you say it is and all those things are there, this is a likely range that you could get. If you're not that exit ready, it'd be on the lower end. Okay. If you're more exit ready, it might be towards the high end, but this is that's why it's indicative. Okay. And I think the important thing here is one of the features, Lynn, and I don't think it's actually built into your model yet, is relative to revenue. So one of the enhancements in the model is we can actually capture the revenue number, which is really useful, and it's something that we'll have a separate chat around on your side. But that's also a reference check that some people do. They say, well, if I'm making $1 million revenue, what is my profit? That's just comparing your valuation to the revenue. And then I say that's a ratio of revenue. It's nothing else other than a sense check. But that I think is really all we need to say. It doesn't mean you're going to sell your business at this rate, but this is kind of the range that you would be, likely to get. There may be strategic reasons that you could get more, but those are 1 in 100 that applies. Okay. So that's the idea. And then you might say, well, how do I increase this value? That's the start of the journey. If you're thinking you're getting your business exit ready and you want to increase that value, sometimes that can be a 2 to 3 year process to actually improve this number over time. And that is super, super important as well. So that's it from me, Lynn.
Thank you. Yeah, just to add to that, because once you've done this valuation and you get this result, the next thing then is like, what do I do next? So we tend to see two different things. One is the indicative value that you are getting from this business valuation tool is in line with what you were thinking, of what you were hoping, or what you are willing to sell for. And then what often happens is when you also feel ready to sell, you might go on that journey of actually putting your business to market. I'm jumping ahead 2 or 3 steps, but that's in general what kind of happens. What's more likely to happen is that the number that you get to see in your email, that indicative value, is not what you were hoping for as a business owner. It's a little bit more on the lower side of what you were hoping for. And then the question is, what are you going to do next? So either you're going to put your business on the market because you want to sell it and you want to sell it quickly, and then you have at least some kind of a sense check that you're probably going to sell your business for an amount lower than what you would initially think it was worth or what you were hoping for. Now, if you don't really want to sell immediately, which is the case for most people who take a business valuation exercise with us, and they have an horizon of a year, up to 2 years, even 3 years, What you then can do is build up a plan to increase the value of your business. And that is the work and the support that we give our clients. Now, I'm not going to dive into that detail because we can have hours and hours and hours of conversations of the things that you could be doing to increase that value. But at least this is, with this business valuation tool, your first sense check of where you are today. And depending on the results of that, you can decide what your next check is or your next step is going to be, basically. And that's the whole point of this tool, to give you an indication of where you are today so you can make more strategic decisions depending on where you want to go tomorrow and in the next couple of months and years ahead. And that kind of wraps up the show for today. So if you're wondering how much is my agency worth, this is how you can figure out what it is worth and have that kind of indicative value of the indicative value for your agency and what it is worth today. Anything you want to add to that, Graham, before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, I think that's it, Lynn. I mean, I think yeah, so it's simple, it's easy, and it's the start of the journey, not the end.
Exactly. Thank you so much for explaining the whole business valuation tool. So that's a wrap for this week's episode of the Master Your Exit Live Show. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope you're leaving with some valuable insights to help you prepare for your big exit. Now, remember, you can catch the replay of this episode and all of the other episodes on our website at thebigexit.co/master your exit shows with a little dash in between, or listen to the audio version on your favorite podcast platform. Now, we also love to hear from you. Send in your exit questions before next week's show by heading over to thebigexit.co/master your exit sign up. You can sign up there and send us your exit related questions so we can answer them on any of the future episodes. We'll be back next Tuesday at 7 a.m. in Los Angeles, 10 a.m. in New York, or 3 p.m. in London with more tips, expert interviews, and tools to help you master your exit. Until then, keep building, keep preparing, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks, Graham, for being here.
Everyone.